Hi, I'm Lisa Curcio, and I would love to welcome you here to Lisa's Stamp Studio. Tonight, we are going to create a triangle corner pop-up card. This card has so many amazing features. I know you're going to love it. In addition to the corner feature, it has a triangle formation that's freestanding, it swivels, and it has a pop-up mechanism for the inside. Now make sure you hang with me through the whole video because I have several other samples to share with you in addition to the one I'm demonstrating tonight. And I'm going to offer you multiple ideas on the closure for this card for mailing. Now we love to interact with you. So if you are here for tonight's premiere, we are here with you right now in the live chat. Along with myself, you'll see that beautiful name in blue, Gina Curcio Holly. Gina is my daughter. She is an avid stamper and of course a member here of our team at Lisa's Stamp Studio. We are both here to answer your questions during tonight's premiere, which is featuring live with you for the first time, as well as get to know you. So please reach out in the chat and chat with us. Now, if you're here watching the replay, please leave a comment. We come back and read every single one. Now, in order to chat, YouTube does require that you log in, which uses your Gmail address. So go ahead and do that now. All right, we're ready. Let's get started on tonight's project. We're starting with a piece of cardstock that measures 8 inches by 8 inches. Now, I'm going to tell you right now that when you cut off the larger chunk on one side, make sure that you save it. That's going to make sense when I show you some of the other samples. We're going to be doing some very simple scoring and cutting. I'm using my Stampin' Up! Paper trimmer. Absolutely love this because of the clear cutting guide, which will be very important today, as well as the fact that it contains both the scoring and the cutting blades. Now they do navigate up and down on the trimmer, so you can keep them on that track at the exact same time. The arm does extend just past 17 inches, so if you'd like to make bigger cards, or perhaps you're a scrapbooker, that really comes into play. We're going to take this square and we're going to do the first score line at 4 inches. I'm just making sure that it's straight up against this ledge here at the top. Now there's also one at the bottom, so you can make things nice and straight, and then we're going to score with the light blade. Now we're going to turn it and do the exact same thing. So in essence, what we're creating here are 4 equal quadrants. I'm going to bring in my pencil for this next mark because I know it's going to be really hard for you to see the score lines on the video. I am going to mark where the score line is here and here so that you'll be able to follow along with me at home. And I kept those light, of course, so that we would be able to erase them when we're done. I'm going to come back here now to the scoring tool. You want to start here at the center and you're going to work on an angle. And this is where that clear cutting guide is going to be very, very important. I am looking, before I go ahead and start closing the track, is that this pencil line and this pencil line are aligned in the center of this black track here as closely as possible. That's where the blade is going to travel. Now, once I'm happy with it, I'm going to go ahead and close that up. And again, you can see right through that clear cutting guide, which makes this fantastic. And then we are going to score. Now we're going to open and we're going to turn and do the exact same thing on this side. So starting at the center, we are going to line up those pencil lines here on an angle. Once you're happy with it, go ahead and close that clear cutting guide and you're going to score. Now, when we're all finished, you're going to have a triangle here at the top, a score line vertically and horizontally. But there's one more thing we need to do. We're going to put it back in the trimmer. I'm going to line it up at 4 inches once again, which is the center of the cardstock. This time I'm going to use the cutting blade, which is at the bottom of your screen, and I'm going to cut up to the center score line. Now I can see it very well. I know it's going to be difficult for you to see in the video, but I'm going to go ahead and just gravitate that up all the way up to here, and you'll see that there's a 4-inch mark there, and there's also an indicator here on the blade. Once we're all done, what you're going to have is this in addition to those score lines. I'm going to go ahead and erase those now. I get a lot of questions about this pencil because it's my very, very favorite craft pencil ever. It's nothing special, but all of you ask about it because the lead is very, very soft and the eraser is a real champ. I have it linked for you on my website under Shop, My Favorite Things, Craft Room Favorites. You'll need to click that little button there that says to see other craft room favorites, but you'll find that there. Now that we have it all scored, let's go ahead and crease on it. So I'm going to work one quadrant at a time, and I'm just going to fold this up. Now, none of us scores perfectly, so this is a great time to fix any little boo-boos you have. You want to make sure that your edges are nice and straight. And I'm going to come in with my bone folder and go right across that. I'm going to do the exact same thing now on this side. A chance to just line everything up and then crease. The score line here in the center is going to go in. So we're going to fold this in half. Again, look at your sides, make sure everything is measured up really good, and then crease it. These two triangle quadrants are going to go back. So I'm going to flip it upside down. And again, I'm looking to make sure everything looks nice and straight. So we'll do one here, and we're going to do the exact same thing on this side. When it's all finished, it should look like this. Now we are going to leave it flat for the next steps because I find that's the easiest way to proceed. You can decorate these quadrants however you'd like. I'm going to use designer series paper on almost all of them. Keep in mind if you want to just do the uppers or just the lowers, you absolutely can change this however you'd like. I have two pieces of designer series paper here, and if you look closely, you'll see that they have variegated type imagery on them. Remember, Stampin' Up's designer series paper is double-sided, so make sure you look through it carefully, which means you have lots and lots of options. One side is typically themed, the other side is very generic. You can use it for just about anything all year round. This comes from Delightfully Floral, so I'm not going to use the floral or the leaf side. I'm going to use that blue side, which is Pool Party. Now, in order for this to fit on the quadrants, we're going to have to cut these. I'm coming back to that trimmer, and this is where that clear guide is going to come into play. Now I'm going to stop and pause and let you know that you should be using designer series paper that does not have a direction. That's very, very important because everything is going to swivel and pivot. Go ahead and put your paper on the diagonal, and you're going to align those tips inside that dark track. Now we've already talked about where the blade travels right here. So you want this tip here and this tip here. Close the guide and you should be able to see those. Now I want to give you another very important tip. My blade gets replaced regularly because I paper craft all the time. But if yours isn't and it's not very, very sharp, you're not going to want to start here because it's going to have a tendency to crunch your paper. So I want to teach you about anchoring the blade. So I'm going to lift this up. I'm putting my index finger here to hold up the track, and I'm going to drop the blade somewhere in the center of the cardstock because I'm not going to start on the shallow end. And then I'm going to cut up and I'm going to cut down, and that's going to give me one piece. If, for instance, your paper has some sort of a pattern, even though it can be mixed and match, you might want to end up labeling these so that you know that they go together. We've got one more piece, and we're going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to close that door, make sure that we are beautifully aligned. I'm going to lift up that track, anchor my blade, and then cut. Because of the gradation of color here, if you were to separate these between these two pieces, it may not match perfectly, especially if you have a pattern like this, which doesn't have a direction, but you've cut the pattern. So if you want them to match up, I'm going to recommend labeling them. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to come back here to the card base, and to keep everything inside your camera view, I'm just going to let you see part of this. So what I'm going to do, and obviously this is not so important for this specific card, but it will be for you. So I'm going to put A and A. I'm going to put B and B, and then here I'm going to decide this is going to be C and C, and I'm not worried about those areas that I'm writing on because you won't see them when we're all done, and then D and D. This way, if you dissipate the papers, it's going to be really easy to see where they go back. And again, if that's for a pattern that doesn't have a direction, but you want those images to appear seamless when they're finished. I hope that makes perfect sense to you. Do you see? All right, now for this specific card, I decided to stamp right on top of the designer series paper samples, which is not indicative of the other cards I'm going to share with you this evening. I do not want to attach them in case I have a boo-boo, right? This way I can cut another piece and start all over. But I'm laying them out for you so that you can see how they're going to go. I'm going to bring in some scrap grid paper here. These are just the large sheets that I've cut down into a square to make it a lot easier here on camera. I'm going to start here at the top, which happens to be the C panel. And I'm going to make sure that this is going to go in the same direction that it's going to go here on my card. So you don't want to do any pivoting. If necessary, I'm going to recommend a little tip. Take your adhesive and put an ever so slightly amount of adhesive here. Take your fingers and kind of mar it up. The oils from your skin will reduce the stickiness, which means you'll be able to lift it easily without ripping. Use your grid paper and tack it down. So I'm going to use those lines in my grid paper to my advantage. That's going to keep the paper from shifting all over the place because remember, this is going to have a direction. I'm going to start with Daffodil Delight ink for this first image. I'm going to open that up here. And I'm bringing in an adorable image from a stamp set I really had a lot of fun with. So there's a couple cute little fish here. This is Submarine Life. Very whimsical, super cute, great for all your nautical fans. But I also have a little tip for you. Do you see here that there's a flag? Well, of course, you would never put a flag under the water. Watch what happens when I turn this image upside down. It'll make a blimp. Lots of fun things you can do with this. The best part is it has a coordinating punch. This is called the Submarine Builder Punch, and it's going to punch out the pieces. I love this because it's 3 punches in one to do several images. Now I have my fish already mounted here. I'm going to ink them up on my Daffodil Delight ink pad, and I chose to gravitate these a little bit more here to the upper right side, and I'm going to stamp. I'm now switching over to the Pool Party ink. And this is one of the reasons I love Stampin' Up! Products is the color coordination. So the cardstock is going to match the ink pad. It coordinates with the designer paper, the alcohol markers, the accessories, and so on. But I need to add some realism to this image. And that is where these adorable little bubbles come into play. So let's do some fun stamping here. And I'm going to stamp that first image, probably somewhere around here. Now without re-inking, I'm going to turn the image and pivot so that I have some halo to this, which means they're not all going in the same direction and some are a little bit lighter and some are a little bit darker. How many of these you place on here is completely up to you, and you can see the importance of having scratch paper underneath you. Now I'm done with this specific piece, but of course we don't want to rip it. So my important tip to you is to turn it to release the designer paper. I'm going to place my silicone craft sheet here because I need to add some liquid glue to this in order to attach it to this panel. Now the reason I'm using liquid glue is because my adhesive will not get into those corners very well, and I don't want this to lift since it's a fun fold. It's going to be opened and closed quite a bit of times. Now I absolutely have fallen in love with this. This is the Precision Glue Press by My Sweet Petunia. We are an affiliate for them, which means they pay us a tiny bit of commission if you buy this through our website. You'll be able to find this under Shop, My Favorite Things, and then Craft Room Favorites. And just scroll a little bit and you'll see it pop up. You can see how small it is. Now with my arthritic hands, I was quite nervous when I got this because it's very, very hard for me to squeeze. But it was a game changer, and now I'm loving liquid glue. So let me show you. Any glue can be placed inside the bottle. One comes with glue in it, the other one's empty. I've put multi-purpose liquid glue that's sold in my online store in this bottle. It will hold about 3 bottles of the multi-purpose liquid glue. It slides right down inside the cartridge, and I love that it has a really tiny precision tip. Now watch. I am going to very lightly get this started. Can you see how little that I'm squeezing here? And look how tiny I can get this, which means it's very arthritic hand friendly. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a little bit of adhesive around the outside. Keep in mind that liquid glue is going to spread a little bit, so don't get too close to the edges. I'm not worried where that adhesive is. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to work inside that quadrant. Now, some of the samples that I have for you tonight are going to have layers, and I'm going to talk to you about those as well when I show those to you. So we're going to attach this one here. Now, remember, we're going to be creating a scene, so we need to make sure that we keep our papers that are numbered or lettered in the right order so that things will make sense when we put them together. So on this specific piece, this is now the D. I'm going to add that little tiny bit of adhesive here. And you'll remember it's going to go this way. So again, we're going to use the grid sheet to our advantage and tack that in place so we don't have any slipping and sliding. I'm coming back to my bubbles. And this time I'm going to start, probably somewhere down around here. I'm going to do the exact same thing that I've done before. I'm not going to be really specific about where I put them and how many I have. You're just going to do whatever appeals to you. Once again, we're going to give that a twist. We're going to bring in that silicone craft sheet once again, and we are going to add our liquid glue. Again, you can see how easy this is to apply, and I love that you can get it super small, which is fantastic for embellishments. It also has a stand. You may have heard that when I stuck it in there. I'll show that to you in just a second. Staying within the perimeter of those score lines, that's going to be really important because remember, this is an interactive card and it's going to need to be able to bend. We're moving on to this next quadrant here, which is marked A on my paper. We're going to add some adhesive to the back side, again, making sure that it's not too sticky. And you're going to see in which direction this is going to go. So it needs to stay that way here on the grid paper for when we stamp. Now this time I decided I wanted to spice things up a little bit. I'm bringing in the fresh freesia ink. Now I'm going to caution you, depending on the color of your designer series paper, if you choose to stamp an image on top of colored paper, you can get an entirely different color. So keep that in mind. Stay within the same color family. This is actually fresh freesia, which is a really light, subtle color, pretty purple on obviously light colored paper. So it's going to work just fine. Lots of firm, even pressure. So we've got a muted image, which is what I'm looking for. Now that little jellyfish wouldn't look like he's doing much without a couple bubbles by that snorkel. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to add a couple of those there. And just to keep it just a little bit more realistic, I'm going to add some more lighter tone bubbles here at the bottom. Twisting, and I'm bringing my panel back in. I'm going to use that liquid glue one more time all around the edges. This piece is now going to go here. Make sure you're leaving that margin that's equal all the way around. Now we just talked about the stand. Now I want to talk to you about this because this is where the brilliant concept of this precision glue press comes into play. Do you see that red stopper here at the bottom where my thumb is? That is the magic. That tip comes into contact with that plunger or stopper, which means you never have to worry about it clogging. It creates almost an airtight seal. So I just leave it inside of here whenever I'm crafting. You can leave it out all day long. And when you're ready to put it away, you're just going to go ahead and use that needle tip and just screw on the cap. And I love that it's pretty as well. And it has a place to store it when you're not using it and you're using your precision glue press. Our last panel is here. We're going to repeat that same process. I'm going to add a few more bubbles to this one as well. Did you notice too how I changed the direction of the stamp? For me, that's really important because I want to make sure I don't have the same pattern every single time. Removing this one, and obviously that one is going to go here. Now, if you've ever gotten a little heavy-handed like I have here down in the corner and you're afraid it's going to ooze too much, here's a trick. Take it on your silicone craft sheet and just wipe off that excess to smooth out the glue. And then once again, this is going to stay within the perimeters of that score line. Now, these two panels can be used for two different things. This is the one that's going to swivel and include our pop-up mechanism. So I want this to be decorative to coordinate with the rest of my designer series paper. This one I am going to use for writing and signing. So I've got another piece of paper here that obviously we do not have to cut, but I do want to stamp on it. Remember, this piece is going to swivel to the inside when we are finished, which means you are going to need to stamp on the diagonal. So just like we've done before, we're going to add a little adhesive, kind of de-stickify that. I'm using my grid paper to make sure that it's nice and straight. This one's going to be slightly different than the one that's inside your free project sheet, which you'll be able to find in the video description below. It's going to include pictures, cutting dimensions, and supplies for all the cards I'm going to share with you tonight. I'm using crumb cake ink, and inside that stamp set, there is this adorable like little sand dune. I'm going to ink it up in the crumb cake, but I found that it was just too dark. So I'm going to stamp off a layer of ink on my scratch paper, and I'm going to take some of that image and stamp it on top of here. Now, if you want to just do this again and again, you can to create a higher dune. And I think I'll go ahead and I'll put a couple of these on here just to give a little elevation at the bottom. Next comes the old olive ink, because no seabed is normal without some seaweed, right? So we've got a seaweed image here, and I'm going to give you a couple tips about this. I'm going to go ahead and ink it up on the old olive, and I'm going to work over here. And because it's photopolymer, you can see where you're going, which is great. But I'm going to offset this a little bit, and I can use that residual ink to get kind of a shadow, which makes it look more like it's in the background. But do you see here? I don't want this as long, perhaps, as this one. I've just cleaned it off camera. I always check to make sure there's no leftover pigmentation on the stamp. If there is, that's an indication that you didn't clean it well. I'm only going to ink up part of the stamp. Do you see that? And because it's photopolymer, once again, I can use that to my advantage. And then again, I can use those smaller pieces here. If I decide I want more depth, I can go ahead and ink it up and do it again. But it's a great way to create density in an image. Now I want some continuity here, so I'm going to come back to those adorable little fish, and I want to make sure you know they have little smiles, so make sure they're going in the right direction. And I'm going to stamp those kind of shallow over here to the lower left side. I am going to twist, and I'm going to turn this over on my silicone craft sheet. Now because this is quite broad, I'm going to come over here to my adhesive, and I'm going to work generously in tabs all around the outside. This is the Stampin' Seal Plus. It's extremely strong, and I am going to adhere this here. Now, before we go into the pop-up portion of this card, I want to talk to you about the closure. This is going to pivot on top of the left panel. These then naturally, because we've creased them, will fold back. That creates the triangle corner to this card. But I found that this doesn't want to stay closed on its own, no matter how much weight I put on top of here. So I decided to use micro magnets. Now I have fallen in love with these. I have them linked for you on my website under my favorite things, craft room favorites. And of course you'll need to click that little red button to see more items. So you get a whole bunch, which is great. You can share them with a friend, but look how thin they are. And I love that for our cards so it doesn't add extra weight to the actual card itself. Now these are going to need to go in two places to put this together. I'm flipping this panel up, and it's going to go here near the lower back side. Now you can use a glue dot, that does work. I'm going to go ahead and add a little dollop circle here of my liquid glue. I want to be quite generous. And then I'm going to take my disc and I'm going to place it there. Now it's important you let it dry. The multi-purpose liquid glue is quite strong, so I know it's going to work well. So I'm going to press that in place. To put the other disc on, it's not a guessing game. There's actually a science to this, which I'm going to show you in just a moment while this dries. I'm going to put this right off to the side, and we're going to work on the pop-up portion now. I have a strip of scrap cardstock here, and the cutting dimensions are all going to be in the project sheet. But I don't want you to get too hung up on that, because on the other samples I share with you, you're going to see that the pop-up mechanism, or the hinge, whatever you want to call it, is going to look quite different on each card you design depending on how you want to use it. For this one, I'm coming back to my trimmer and we're going to make a couple easy score lines. The first one's going to be at 1 inch, so I'm going to line that up here. Make sure your paper is straight across that ledge. We're going to move it over to 2 inches. This specific piece is 1 by 3.5. And again, this can be easily adjusted based on your image. We're going to come back here and we are going to crease on those score lines. We are going to go over them with the bone folder. That's going to be very, very important for this because this, again, is the mechanism for the pop-up. This piece is going to hold our image. So I'm going to set this aside for right now. We will come back to it, but let's work on the image next. This is my mini Misty stamp positioning tool. They also have one in a full size. Can't live without this for a couple reasons. Arthritic hands makes it very hard to push when I have solid images of any size. I don't often get a really good impression. Second of all, if I miss, I can realign that same image a second time and get a deeper concentration of ink. You'll see that. It's great if you're making multiples of the same card as well because it keeps the stamp positioned and you can repeatedly stamp. I'm going to open up the clear hinge. I'm going to take out the magnet that's included and I'm going to position it here. You want to work in the corner. That works really, really well for me. Now, if you're working on tiny pieces of cardstock or something much larger, then I'm going to recommend the sticky mats. Now, the sticky mats come in a variety of sizes, and you do get 3 different grid formations on the same package. So this is obviously for the mini, but I love this because they're super sticky. So you can lay this on top of here and put your paper wherever you want, perfectly align it, and you don't need the magnet because the paper is stuck, stamp, and then carefully peel it off. Now these do become less and less sticky over time. At first they're really sticky. So my best tip to you is take it to your jeans, give it a tap 1 time. I have read that you can use temporary spray adhesive to revive them, or you can just buy another package. They're really, really inexpensive, but I'm finding they're lasting a very long time. And like I said, you get 3 of these in a package. Now I want to use the submarine image. Remember we talked about the punch and it having a direction of the pieces. So it's very important that you either have your punch nearby to be cognizant of the direction on your paper, or you can make a template. I keep my template right here inside the stamp case. So this is a 3 by 3 piece of scrap cardstock. I put it inside the punch and I punched it out. I added a little arrow so I know how it went inside the punch, and I labeled it as top. But when I leave this on my work surface, I can now see which way the direction of the stamps needs to go. I'm going to lay my image here on my scratch paper. Now, when you're using a builder punch like the one we're going to use today, it's important to use strips. This way you won't have a whole lot of waste. I'm going to close that door and it's going to pick it up. Now, because this is photopolymer, it's really sticky at first, so it's going to lift the paper. Don't panic, just put it right back in the corner and tack that down. It's positioned now exactly where we want it. I'm going to take that Daffodil Delight ink and I'm going to ink up the image. Now this is where the Misty is wonderful, and I am going to press. I don't know about you, but these solid images always are persnickety, which means I'm going to have areas that are lighter and darker, and sometimes I just pure miss. I'm going to go back over this again. I want a nice, deep impression, and that doesn't look good enough to me. So I'm going to come back to here, and we're going to ink this up once again, and because of the perfect alignment, we're going to go right back over this and press, and literally I'm using my fingertips. And look at, isn't that so much better? Now we've got a real purposeful solid image. I'm going to come in with the punch and I'm going to slide my image in. I'm turning it slightly to make it hand friendly. And once I have it aligned how I want it, I want a little bit of a white border all the way around. I want you to lightly squeeze the punch. That's going to lock your cardstock into position. And then when you punch, you are assured to have it punched out well. This is going to need a couple more pieces, so I've got another scrap piece of cardstock here, and this time I'm going to use Basic Gray. Now this is a color that you may not think you need, but I love it because when you're using pastel colors like we are on this card, it's not as harsh as a black ink pad, but yet predominant. So we're going to start with the periscope image, which is here. And once again, as our little punch shows us, it's going to have to go on an image, or of course the template inside your stamp would be a great cheat mark. We're going to go ahead and we're going to ink that up, and we're going to stamp and mimic this in the same direction as the punch. I've got the punch here. I'm going to slide that cardstock in, and then we're going to squeeze it out. I like to cut off that excess so it doesn't get jammed inside my punch, and this should be plenty for what we need next, which is going to be the propeller. So I have that here, and then once again, either looking at your template or your punch, it's going to give you an idea of the direction. So the stem needs to be down and it needs to go on an angle. We'll bring that punch back in, and what we're going to do is we are going to line this up. Now, if you're like me and you've got a piece that's a little bit small, navigate to the other side, or guess what? You can add a Post-it note to one end to extend your reach. We've got our pieces. Let's quickly assemble them. So we're going to come over here to the silicone craft sheet. I'm going to use my Take Your Pick tool. It has a putty tip, which makes it super easy to pick up those small little pieces of cardstock, dimensional backing, sequins, other embellishments. It also comes with an interchangeable stylus tool and the paper piercing tool attachment and that little spatula, which is wonderful for getting up underneath your mistakes. I like to add the glue to the tip of my image, and this is where that precision glue press is going to come into play. So I'm going to put a tiny bit of glue there, and rather than manipulate this, I can go like this because it's on the silicone craft sheet. That is going to ensure that any liquid glue, hot glue, or adhesive that gets to here will not stick, keeps your work surface nice and clean. The propeller now, we're going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to add a tiny bit of glue right there on the end. I'm going to pick up that image, and then we're going to attach this here near the back end of our submarine. Now while that's drying, let's go ahead and let's move ahead. Remember our magnet? Well, we're going to need to add another one here, but it's not where you think it's going to be. It's going to have to be here on the front, right? Because remember, this is going to swivel. So the best tip I can give you is to go ahead and take yourself your second magnet, then you're going to let them attach to each other. So now they're double stacked. You are going to add liquid glue here to the back side. You are going to take that cardstock panel and you're going to swivel it as if it were closed. So I'm looking to align the edges the best that I can, and I am going to press. So when it's all finished, this is how it's going to stand. Remember, our pop-up has to come inside of here yet. Now I'm going to let this sit while we work on the pop-up so that this dries. This adorable little pop-up is going to need that mechanism we talked about, which is here. And this is the hinge that's going to hold your image. Now you can see that this can be narrower or wider based on what this is going to be placed here. So let's go ahead and let's attach our sub. So I've got my silicone craft sheet here. I'm going to go ahead and add my adhesive to that bottom area. I'm going to lay it flat once my adhesive is on, and now I am looking to center this so the bulk of the weight of my image is in the middle of the hinge, and then we're going to attach that in place. I'm going to fold back those triangle corners and we're going to work here. This is going to get attached here. Now you're probably thinking, what's going to happen here? Well, we're going to make an easel for it, and I'll share that with you in a minute. I do have that done ahead of time. This is going to have to be attached, but I want to caution you, depending on what you put here determines the depth of where you're going to place it. I want to maybe move forward just a little bit so that this is going to stand up and float very nicely. In this specific case, what you can do is fold it flat, and then once you're happy with the positioning, we're going to take that handy dandy craft pencil again. And so you can either eyeball this, which I don't like eyeballing, or you can just put a little tiny pencil mark right there just to give you an idea of the perimeter. Now we're going to turn this back portion over. You can use your liquid glue or of course adhesive. This is super strong, which is one reason why I like it for my interactive cards. This now is going to go here. So I'm going to align this bottom with my pencil mark. If I think the pencil mark's going to show, I can erase it now, but I'm going to come a little bit forward and I'm going to attach it there, and I'm looking at the back and that looks fine, making sure it's going to fit, and it sure does. Now that pencil mark is probably going to show, so I'm going to come in with that fantastic craft pencil and I'm going to erase that. We need the stopper, so this is going to stand straight up and down. And this is where the theme of your card can really come into play. Now I did stamp this ahead of time. It says happy birthday, all from the same stamp set. Every image is from the same stamp set. But I did make a layer because I wanted this to be stabilized. So I'm going to turn that upside down. I'm going to add my adhesive to the back, and then we are going to center this here on this piece of cardstock. Once I have that in place, we're going to flip that over. I'm grabbing my dimensionals here, and we are going to be very careful to balance these. I'm going to use that paper piercing tool attachment on my Take Your Pick tool to remove those backings. That makes my arthritic hands very happy. Now what we're going to do is we're going to float that image, and we're going to decide where we want this. Do you see how the face of that little fish maybe might be in the way if I were to go center? So why not? Let's go a little bit off center and make this a little bit fun. So I'm going to go ahead and just very lightly put that there, turn it back here to make sure that it looks the way I want it, and then I can secure that in place. And here's what's great now, is the submarine has been stopped now. Now this should have plenty of time for this to be dry, so I'm going to go ahead and very carefully remove these. This now is going to get hidden by that white layer of cardstock I'm choosing to put here where we can write or sign. Same stamp set. We're going to add our adhesive generously around the outside perimeter. Now, when I first did this, I was really concerned that that bump from the magnet would show. And you know what? It really doesn't. Now that we have our adhesive in place, we're going to come back over to here. I'm going to collapse this. This is going to get centered here. You want to make sure you're covering up your magnet. So I'm looking at the top, the bottom, and the sides. And when I'm happy, I'm going to go ahead and just press that in place. I have double layered this on another card and it works perfectly. You just want to make sure you get adhesive in your corners. Now let's talk about the front because we got to get this in an envelope. You're going to make sure that this is nice and flat. You're going to come down and then you're going to fold it in half, and this is going to be the front of your card. I already have it done for you because we've done the stamping before. The only difference on this piece is I added a couple of those little snails type seashell images from the stamp set. I thought that gave this a little bit of character, but you can see how it's boinging, right? So I've got a couple ideas for you. I'm going to lay that flat and I'm going to adhere this to the front. This is the exact same piece of designer series paper size that we used on the inside. We're going to do a belly band. Here's a strip of cardstock. This is 1 by about 9.5 inches. But what happens is when you create a belly band around something that expands is it'll tend to crack. So let me give you a tip. Take your bone folder and gently go across your cardstock. It breaks down the fibers just enough to eliminate the cracking and makes the wrapping a lot easier. The proper way to do a belly band is to make the pretty in the back, believe it or not, and the raw ends to the front where they'll eventually be hidden. So I'm going to go place this one here and this one here. Remember, when you let go, this is going to expand a little depending on the size of the layers you have inside. Once you're happy, give it a little crease. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add some adhesive here because I know this adhesive is crazy strong. I don't have to worry about it not holding together. And a little bit here. And then I'm going to line those up where I want them, not too tight, so it's here. The belly band should slide up and down for the receiver to take off. Here, all I did was I used some dies. It's called the Reach for the Stars dies. They have graduated circles here. I have one missing because I'm going to teach you another hinge or mechanism trick. And I stamped that same little jellyfish. And then I die cut the slightly larger size from that same pool party cardstock because we love coordination, don't we? And then this is going to get attached here. I like to eye this if necessary, use some pencil marks, but I'm going to come in here with my dimensionals. I'm going to place one here in the center, and the others are going to be very, very close by because I want to make sure I don't exceed the perimeter of my circle. You'll remove those backings as we've done before, and then you are going to center the image here on the belly band. So cute. Now this is 4x4 when it's closed. Allow a little expansion space here. You can use the envelope punch board under My Favorite Things, Craft Room Favorites, to make a custom envelope. Quite frankly, I put this in a standard A2 envelope, even though I have a little extra space. It's totally fine for mailing. So this is how it's going to work. They're going to receive it, slide off the belly band. It's going to start to expand already, and they're going to be like, what is this? It's going to be like, oh, wow. Naturally, it's going to come back on top of itself. They'll see the magnet on the back. I gave it to Bob the Builder. He had absolutely no problem whatsoever figuring out how to put this amazing interactive corner pop-up card together. But wait till you see these other samples I made for you. This next one is going to use the stamp set called Planted Paradise. Now this is a unique stamp set in that it's a reversible, which means one image will give you both the solid and the outline. So you can make this lighter and put the darker color over the top. Or you can use it straight up the way it is, which is what I did. There's no dies or punch for the stamp set, but they're so easy to cut out. And let me show you what I made. Here's the front of the card. Again, designer series paper. This paper is Hello Irresistible. Remember, the beauty of Stampin' Up! Products is the coordination, so not just the colors. You can mix and match from other packages of designer series papers and even stamp set fonts to get custom cards. So I'm going to go ahead and slide that off. And then this one is going to open up and then swivel like the other one did. Our magnet is well hidden in this corner, but listen, it still snaps together. Our corners come down, and I opted to keep this very, very simple. I have a very large pot with some greenery inside. I made this a thank you card. And again, this one has the belly band. But I want to draw your attention to this, the hinge. I don't know if you noticed this or not, but it's nothing like the first one I just showed you. It's circles because it fit better for my image. And I want to show you how to make this. I'm just using this scrap cardstock I had from this one. So remember I told you to save that edge? You're going to fold this in half. You're going to create a crease. You're going to pick a die that's relative in size to the image you're going to put on the pop-up. Just don't surpass the circumference of what you're going to need for your width. You're going to take your die and you're going to position it on the cardstock so that not all of it meets the crease. Now, if you're like me, this is going to move all over the place, and this is my absolute favorite product when die cutting. Again, it's linked for you on my website under Shop My Favorite Things. The Post-it labeling and cover-up tape is literally that on a dispenser. You can make it smaller, and guess what? You can reuse it numerous times. So I'm going to tack it in place so I know when I die cut this, it's not going to move. So I want to show you there's a little tiny opening where it's not covering the paper at the top. I've just die cut this. I'm going to flip it over to make sure it's cut all the way through. I'm going to carefully remove the tape only because I know I can use it multiple times. No reason to waste it. I actually put this on the handle of my die cutting machine, or you can put it right back here on top of the dispenser. You're going to remove the die. And then here now, you're going to have two circles that are connected. Take your paper and literally just fold it in half. So you want that front circle to be half its normal size. Now, of course, you can do this with your paper trimmer if you'd like and use the scoring blade. But when it's an uneven size circle, this just works perfect. And then look, isn't that amazing? So that's exactly what I did here. I just used a larger circle die to accommodate the size of the pot that I have here. Wait till you see this next card. You won't believe this, but this has absolutely no stamps on it, but it has the most exquisite paper dies I have ever used. And they're called Paper Florist. You're going to be able to find them in my online store, as with all the other paper products I've mentioned here, if I didn't tell you they were in my favorite things. Simple closure, so I did no greeting here, but I clustered all those beautiful die-cut flowers, super easy to use. And I want to give those dies a little shout out. Here they are. So there's petals that you can make larger flowers, centers that can be grouped together, leaves and buds. But here's the magic. This is all one die, but it die cuts these separately so they can be stacked. The same with these and the same with these. I used these along with this floral center and these little tiny centers to make the flowers on this specific card. For this one, I just used ribbon for the closure. Of course, a belly band would be fine. I was going for a more elegant look. We're going to open this up and it's going to swivel, but here I'm going to stop you. Instead of putting the magnet underneath the layer in the corner like I did on the other two, I put it on the top because I knew my flower would camouflage it. There's your snap. All my designer series paper does the work. Here's my easel. Now, have you ever made a card and come back and said, oh my gosh, in hindsight, I would have done it different? This is one of those. I would have made my circle bigger and added more flowers, but it's still beautiful, isn't it? Now, I want to call your attention to this, and this is one more thing I want to demonstrate for you tonight. This uses a hybrid bundle of products called Thoughtful Moments. So the embossing folder works with the dies, and believe it or not, they work at the same time. Let me show you how. I knew I wanted some color to my words, so I'm just going to umph this up just a little bit, and I use Get Well on the card I just made. I'm going to use the Lost Lagoon ink, which is the same color I just shared with you on the other card. I'm going to add some ink by dabbing it or rubbing it right over the words. Now don't panic, this is plastic, so it can easily be wiped off when we're all done or run underneath the sink. Here comes the die. This literally fits right over the top of the embossing folder. Now you might be thinking, oh, there's no way that's going to work. It does, it works great. There's little grooves where the words are, so it just fits right into place. You're going to take your cardstock and put it on top, and you're literally just going to close this. I'm now going to take this to my die cutting machine. I've just ran it through my machine. This can be wiped off very easily with a baby wipe as well. But do you see it here? Oh my goodness, I absolutely love this. So I got some outline to my letters without having to ink them. And this is what I used on the inside of the card. Obviously, the higher concentration of ink, the larger and more depth of your outline. We've got 3 amazing projects tonight, all with different closures. Of course, you can create belly bands or you can use ribbon. Beautiful cards, and as always, I like to know your favorite. It's always so fun to see which one you love, so pop down right now in the comments and let me know. And if you haven't heard about Stamp Studio memberships, you are going to love this. If you love exclusive ideas that have not been seen anywhere else, we have got you covered. Every Monday, I will send you an email to your email box that includes a tutorial project that I don't share anywhere. And matter of fact, it's designed specifically for these memberships. Now, there are 2 levels. Level 1 is $5 for the whole month. Now, these tutorials include color photos, step-by-step instructions, and of course, a supply list, which makes it easy for you to recreate at home. Now, if you're a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, you're going to love this because the photos and tutorials are not watermarked, which means you can use them for any classes and ideas of your choice. And if you're looking for a bit more, then level 2 for $10 a month might be the way to go. It includes a monthly fun fold card. It also includes a discount in my PDF tutorial library. And of course, I do product giveaways every single month. You'll find all this information over on my website under memberships. We are in the midst of Stampin' Up's largest sale of the year called Celebration. For every $50 increment in product that you purchase, you are going to choose a free exclusive product from the sale brochure. Now, this ends on February 29th, so get your order ready. We would love to be able to have your order placed with us here at Lisa's Stamp Studio. I offer exclusive and generous ordering rewards, and all that information is over on my website. Now, if you might be thinking, you've got a huge wish list, I understand. I was right there with you. This might be a perfect opportunity for you to consider the custom starter kit. During Celebration, Stampin' Up! Is offering 2 options for you. The first is a $60 product value of a glass mat, a silicone pad, and a cling cloth, all of which can be pictured over on my website. The second is an increase of $30 of product included in the kit. So normally $125 of product of your choice, which is great, you get to pick it, is now $155 in product. And either option only pays $99 with free shipping. And best of all, you're going to be able to enjoy the 20% demonstrator discount, ready, through July 31st of 2024. That means anything you buy is going to be discounted. I have more information for you over on my website, so head over there and check it out. I'm so glad that you could be here with me tonight. We look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great evening, everyone.